Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever we may be. It's great to be able to see you along on our live stream, or possibly a little bit later when you can watch the recording. Well, as we know, throughout our lives, being part of a high control group, the Jehovah's Witnesses, even when we leave, we find that we still struggle with lots of things. For us to keep on moving ahead, we need to wipe out some of those things that we feel guilty about, we feel sad about, we feel happy about in some cases. Well, today we're going to be looking at the aspect of guilt, the rational and irrational. Today we have a guest. His name, as you would have seen in the little intro, is Gary Alt. Good evening, Gary.
Hey, Shayne, how you doing?
Good, mate. You had a good day?
Yeah, so far. It's 7 o'clock
great.
my time, 7 o'clock p.m. my time.
Yeah, we've just gone 1 o'clock here in New Zealand.
Okay.
So while we've got sun outside, we do have a little bit of wind. We are in autumn now, or fall, as you call it, and it's getting cooler. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah. Opposite here, we're 70 degrees here. So it's 1 p.m. tomorrow, though, right? It's 1 p.m. Sunday where you are.
Yeah, we're Sunday, you're Saturday.
Right. So,
so guilt, rational, irrational. Tell us what the difference is.
Well, the difference between rational and irrational is rational makes sense and has a use and can be good if used correctly. Irrational is like anything that's irrational. Irrational fears are they kind of they prevent us from doing things. So irrational guilt or any kind of irrational emotion doesn't really fit the situation and is just gonna keep us clogged up.
Yep.
I guess that's how I would define it. So,
fair enough.
Yeah.
So when you talk about guilt, what are we actually saying? We've both come from the high control group of the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
What are we actually saying that guilt is? How we live with it?
Guilt is it's basically an emotion, a mode of emotion or an expression of emotion, where we feel badly about something we did wrong or something that we didn't do that we should have done. And it can be, as you said, rational or irrational. It could be something deliberate or something that was an accident.
Yep.
And there are different degrees of guilt. But I think the important thing to recognize is that, especially if we have problems with guilt, because we were made to feel guilty pretty much all the time for doing bad things or not doing good things, not going out in field service enough or what have you, we might tend to think of guilt as being, like something we just don't want to have guilt. We just want to deal with guilt. And it actually can be healthy. It can actually protect us and protect other people, just kind of the same way that we feel pain if we touch a hot stove. What is that for? Why do we feel pain? It's because we don't want to touch a hot stove. It'll hurt us. It'll damage us. It might even kill us. And we could hurt other people as well. So it can be useful. So I think it's important to recognize the difference between healthy and unhealthy, rational versus irrational, lest we just throw it all in the garbage and say, I'm not feeling guilt anymore. I'm done.
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at, say, an example that most of us who are watching the live stream have had to put up with. You're not doing enough hours in field service.
Right.
How's that work?
Yeah, that was a killer because if you're going to allow, well, first of all, guilt was used as a tool by those in charge. It definitely was. Some more than others, but if we're going to allow it to affect us, there's no end to it when you're talking about field service hours, because what's the maximum hours you can put in? I guess you can put in 24 a day times 30 a month. If you never sleep, so where does it end? So, we would tend to think, if I just decided to sleep in that morning because I'm completely beat from a really rough week, and I did all kinds of great things. I gave a talk on the ministry school, whatever, and I'm just really wiped out. And I've been out every Saturday for the last 2 months, and I just want to pray. But then we beat ourselves up because, oh my goodness, I should have been out, or I should be an auxiliary pioneer, or if I'm an auxiliary pioneer, I should be a regular pioneer, or you should. And it becomes irrational because there's no end to it. At what point can you say, I've done enough, I can't improve? You'll never say that if you allow guilt to affect you that way.
Okay. So we've come out from that high control group. We might drag that sort of guilt feeling with us. Is there a way to get rid of that?
Yeah, I think the way I confront it, or like if somebody comes to me and they have an issue with that, is I'll just ask, what? Okay, well, guilt is not necessarily good or bad. It just depends, So what is it that you feel guilty about? Just tell me, what is it you feel guilty about? And the process of talking about it is going to really clear a person's mind. That's what coaching is all about. And they might even realize just talking about it that it's not really the rational kind of guilt, is it? So just talking about it, like, give me an example of something that, like what's bothering you right now, though, what do you feel guilty about? And whatever that might be. Okay, so let's talk about, like, did you actually do something wrong? What did you actually do wrong? And if the answer is nothing, then there's no reason to feel guilt. Well, maybe you did do something wrong. Well, was it deliberate? Did you hurt a lot of people? Like what's the nature of it? Maybe it is something that guilt, a measure of guilt, is appropriate. Maybe. In that case, what can you do about it? Make an apology, perhaps. Make good on it. Try not to do it again. Okay, fine. There's a healthy way to approach it. But if we're talking about irrational guilt, that's basically a habit that we've carried over from being us, from guilt being used as a tool against us to get us to do things and not do other things. Then we probably have to have that conversation with ourselves or with the trusted person about what is it that we're actually feeling guilty about, why, and is it even rational to think that I really did something wrong?
Okay. Moana, I notice you asked with regards to a question. You have one. Would you like to put it in the chat? Okay, so just getting back to the guilt side of things, like they would use it with regards to field service. If we weren't doing enough, we should be getting out there. How would they use it when we weren't out in field service? Say, if we wanted to go to a theme park, maybe if you're in the States and you're in California or somewhere like that, and you want to go to Disney World.
Right. Yeah.
They use techniques.
Right. So, I mean, who doesn't want to take their kids to Disney World or a local park or whatever? What's wrong with that? Everybody realizes there's a benefit to that. But we did it when we really could have been. The circuit overseer is coming, and we planned this trip months ago, and now the circuit overseer is coming, and we want to support him. We want to be out in the field ministry, and come on, he's going to be there every 6 months forever. There's going to be a new one every 3 years. But that's the way we're meant to feel. We didn't support the circuit overseer, or there was a big push for auxiliary pioneers that month, and like they wanted to have 20 and they only got 19, and we could have been the 20th one. Things like that. But if I had just not done that Disney World trip, we could have done that next month or whatever. And instead of it being a wonderful thing, time we spent with our family, relaxation, something that's going to rejuvenate us so we can come back and go back to work or whatever it is, it made us feel guilty, So that was then, but then what about now? I mean, do we still guilt ourselves over things that are completely normal, and doing just something for ourselves, maybe treating ourselves to a nice dinner out or something like that? Like, oh, how can I do that when our budget's been kind of, well, all right, maybe it wasn't a good idea, but maybe who cares? Like once in a while you want to treat yourself, So it's just, again, that pattern of guilt, that habit that we had, that we want to avoid the pain that comes with it. I don't want to use the word negative, because there's really no such thing as a negative emotion. Even if you look up Google, negative emotion, you will find material on it. But I like to say that there is no such thing as a negative emotion, because which ones are negative? Sadness? Well, if somebody you love dies, you're going to be sad, and it's actually part of the healing process. So it's a good thing. Sadness can be good as long as it doesn't last too long and it doesn't overwhelm you. Anger, hey, there are things to be angry about, as long as you don't overdo your reaction to it, and let it take over your take control of you. So same thing with guilt. It's not in itself is not a negative thing, but again, if it's used as a tool to make us do something or make us not do something, then it's hurtful, and it's a negative. It's not negative. It's unhealthy.
Yeah. Okay, Moana's sent through the question now. She goes, I'm wanting to open up more around my story publicly on social media, but I have this guilt around hurting my family. It's like I can't voice my truth. How would you answer that, Gary?
Well, I would answer that the same way I would if somebody is feeling guilty about not going to the memorial or leaving the organization. It's in the same category. Why do we feel guilty about that? And I'm not saying it's wrong. Like you're completely wrong to feel guilty. But what is the real reason? Why would your family care so much if you were just expressing, a different interest in music than somebody has? Nobody would care. But because it has to do with religious teaching and religious thought and what they consider loyalty, they have a problem with that. Well, why? It goes back to an article that they. In fact, I'm going to read from this. I hate quoting from the JW website, but I'm going to do it just this one time. It's this question about, does a person have the right to change religions? Yes, the Bible shows that people have the right to change their religion. It records many who chose not to follow the form of religion practiced by their relatives and who, of their own free will, decided to worship the true God. And it goes on and on. Well, that's when then they're trying to encourage people to move towards Jehovah's Witnesses. Abandon your Catholic faith, your Protestant faith, your Jewish faith, because this is the truth. So it's okay. But what would they say if it was somebody who is a Jehovah's Witness or was, and is now their beliefs just don't line up anymore? Well, that's just, you're an apostate, so there's a double standard there. There's a kind of hypocrisy there. So do you want to feed into hypocrisy and allow it to control you? Or, just as to answer her question more directly at this point, do you want to like feed into that hypocrisy and, like legitimize it? Like you mentioned, I can't voice my truth. Truth is a powerful word. I mean, they use it like this is the truth, which is ridiculous. But if you feel strongly about something is true to you, but you feel like you can't voice it, there's a problem with that, and that's not your problem; it's their problem. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. Like, they might shun you or whatever. There might be some fallout. But to feel guilty about expressing yourself, even in a public forum, why would that hurt the family? That doesn't. It doesn't really add up. And I appreciate that your family might honestly feel that way. But it's basically because of being taught by a high control religious organization that once you're in, you can't voice doubts, you can't ask questions, and you certainly can't go public with them. That's the problem. You're not the problem. They're the problem. And then to take it one step further. Well, maybe I'll leave it for later. I was gonna take it into another, but I think that answers the question for now.
If you have any more questions, Moana, put them up. If we can fine tune the answer, that'd be great. I think Rocky sort of summarizes some of the thoughts that you mentioned with regards to it giving up on your happiness at your expense.
Yeah,
for them being happy.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's because you're. I mean, your happiness is important, of course, but also your integrity is important.
Absolutely.
So you're going to, in effect, hide what you think is the truth because it's going to upset somebody. Mm-hmm. I mean, if they did that, I mean, it's a double standard, really, that they even feel that way.
Yeah. We had another comment come through from. Moana said. No, that's not. Where is it? This one here. They say you left Jehovah.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, some people, they do discontinue believing in God. They become an atheist, or they go back to Judaism, or whatever it is, and so they can't say they left Jehovah. Personally, I still believe in God and Jesus, and I use the name Jehovah because I think it's the best version we have in English. It's obviously not Hebrew, but I don't think it has anything to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. It's just that's what God's name is. So I don't think I've left Jehovah. I'm not, when they say you're an apostate, I mean, nobody said that to me, but like what? Because I don't believe all of the facets of Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm an apostate to your organization, but not to Jehovah. So again, it comes from when somebody makes that statement, you have left Jehovah, and you don't feel like you have. It comes from that viewpoint that we have the truth, meaning them. We have the truth, and if you don't believe any facet of our beliefs, you've left Jehovah. Well, is that rational? And basically, they're using guilt as a tool.
Mm.
So don't give into that. Just I know it's a simplistic way of putting it, but don't give into that guilt that they're trying to put on you, because guilt doesn't motivate anyway. It's not a good motivator. It's fine for if you've actually done something wrong and you want to correct it, but have you done anything wrong by not going to the meetings anymore? No. So what does this say? I said to Mom the other day, just because I left the organization. Yeah, well, that's a good point. Just because I left the organization does not mean I left God. And I feel exactly the same way about my life. And I know people that have left God because they're now atheists. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's what they think. That's what they have come to believe. They can still be good moral people. But I think it hurts more because if you really love God, whoever you think God is, it really hurts for somebody to impugn that, to say that you've left him. I remember my wife saying that even when I was still in the organization, when I couldn't bring myself to go to a meeting one night when I had an instruction talk, I think it was, and I was just feeling so burnt out. I just couldn't even see myself doing it. And she's trying to encourage me to get up the gumption to go to the game wall. And she says, "You're turning your back on Jehovah." And I thought, holy mackerel, that is the worst thing you can say to me, the worst thing, because I'm not turning my back on anybody. I just need a break, Anyway, we're not talking about just not going to a service meeting. We're talking about, we don't have anything to do with the organization because we don't see it as the truth anymore. In fact, it's the opposite. So just try not to give into that. Don't let the guilt lodge in your heart like you've actually done something wrong. Because really, logically and reasonably, have you done anything wrong?
Exactly. Okay, so just looking back on some of the examples that we've looked at, say we've been out for a while and we still struggle with the guilt side of things, that we might be upsetting our parents, we might be doing all this other things that we know the J-dubs will get upset at. What are some of the questions we could ask ourselves so that we could have a little tick box in our head going, right, tick, no, that's not what we need to do. No, it's not that. No, and no. What are some of the practical things we could ask ourselves in our head?
Well, you could sort of make a list, either mentally or on a piece of paper, of in order to, let's say we're talking about the example of making our parents happy, who are in and we're out. What can I actually do to change that? And make a list of the things that would make them happy. And then think about, can I really do that? Number one is going to be go to the meetings, go back, get reinstated. It's going to, that's going to be at the top of the list, because really, what can make them happy besides that? There's really nothing. I remember years ago hearing different experiences of people whose family was not witnesses and they became witnesses. And family members were like, "Oh my goodness, I would rather you became a prostitute or a drug dealer or a drug addict. I'd rather you did anything else than become one of Jehovah's Witnesses." Well, reverse that. Would your parents really be able to say, "I'd rather you did this, or that than do that"? No, the only thing you can do to make them happy is something that you are completely opposed to. So I don't think you're going to have a very long list. It's going to be about 1 or 2 items long. That to make my folks happy, I'm going to have to get reinstated. I'm going to have to go to all the meetings. I'm going to have to get baptized if I'm not already. I'm going to have to go out in the field ministry, all things that you don't believe in. So it's not a matter of, well, maybe if I just, I don't know, didn't say Merry Christmas to them, they'd be no. That's not going to make them happy. Or maybe if I stop smoking cigarettes, no, that's not going to make them happy. The only thing that's going to make them happy is reinstatement, baptism, going to the meetings. Yep. And if that's just not right to you, why do you want to compromise your integrity like that?
That is very true. So when you think about all that effort being put back into going back, and I know my daughter went back and then she discovered it wasn't what they were like before she was disfellowshipped. We still struggle with the guilt, though. What happens if we keep struggling with the guilt and we just can't get it out of our heads? Are there some further steps we can take?
In other words, we know we're not going back, but we still have guilt about those things, not about just anything.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think talk to somebody that's going to be non-judgmental and is going to listen and ask the right questions and not propose a fix-it solution real quickly. Because it's really healthy to talk about things that we're struggling with, and you'll find it's almost a miracle. I think every time it happens that you just get this clarity when you've been able to talk about something, and you'll start to realize that this is. I mean, if we try to categorize it is this rational or irrational, I'm pretty sure you would just discover that it's irrational. Yeah. And so therefore, what good is it? I mean, it's like talking about pain. So we don't want to touch the hot stove because it hurts when we touch a hot stove. Well, does that mean that every time we walk into the kitchen, we're not going to go within 6 feet of the stove no matter what? Well, that would be irrational. That would be a phobia, So just figure out what, where does this guilt fall? Is it rational or irrational? And if indeed it is irrational, then like I said, talk to somebody about it and express your feelings about it, and I think you'll find that a lot of healing in doing that.
Yep. We had this comment come in. I grew up believing in unreal things, taught lies, made up by money-making corporation abuse and manipulation. We have all those sorts of things that are going on in our heads. Does it take time to get that guilt out of our head?
Well, with some people it does. Didn't with me, because the way I exited was a little bit unusual, I suppose. But with some people, I think it does, and I think it's because it's a pattern. Like sometimes we can't quite put our finger on it. Like what why do I feel this way? And sometimes it's a pattern of that's the way we were always made to feel. Guilty if you did something wrong. Guilty if you didn't do something you're supposed to do. Guilt. And that's, we might even have to, like, I don't know, depending on if we still read the Bible. I don't really spend a lot of time reading it anymore, so I'm not any good at quoting scriptures, and I don't want to do that now. But there's this one expression that they used to use a lot, and I don't remember where it is, but the love of the Christ compels us. So his example of love and self-sacrifice and all he did compels us to, want to serve him and do all these wonderful things and put our brothers over ourselves and things like that. So that word compel, that's a scary word. Compel, like if you're compelled to do something, it may be something that you don't necessarily think you should do, or you don't want to do, or you can't do, but you feel compelled to do it. So that's where that unhealthy guilt can come in, is when we feel compelled, and that could be like retroactive, where it's like in our minds and in our hearts, that's the way we've always responded to things. And what we need to do is start new patterns of thinking, of not allowing guilt and other unhealthy emotions, or hurtful expressions of emotions. I'll put it that way, because, like I said, any of these emotions can be healthy in certain times, in certain instances, but not allowing that pattern to kind of, in other words, recognizing it when it comes. Like what What
Yeah.
am I really feeling guilty about? What is it really that's bothering me? Is it really rational?
Okay. So when it comes, you mentioned that you don't read the Bible much more. Rocky says that sometimes XJ dubs make her feel guilty because she stopped believing in God. Is
Mm-hmm.
there a way to be able to handle that?
Well, she mentions in her comment plenty of evidence from archaeology, artifacts, geology, biology, cosmology, anthology, etc. That's a lot of ologies. I mean, if you've studied those things, and I don't care, how exhaustively, but if you've studied them and you've come to the honest conclusion that there is no God, now I would disagree. I would come up with a different conclusion. But if that's your conclusion, that's your conclusion. What's wrong with that? It's not like you don't believe in a God. It's not like you hate Jehovah or something. You just don't believe in that anymore. So maybe you have to find something else to believe in. I don't know, but um, to me, it's important to be a productive. And by productive, I don't mean like you have to accomplish amazing, great things every day, but just to be a positive part of society wherever you happen to live. And it doesn't matter what you believe, whether you believe in a God or not, because that doesn't make God exist or not exist. Whether you believe in God or not does not make his or her existence real or not real. So it's the things that we do with our lives and the way we interact with people that really make a difference in the world. So I mean, guilt over knowledge. Again, knowledge is knowledge. If you've taught yourself something and you can prove it, I don't see where guilt should have anything to do with it. Not trying to say that, not trying to invalidate your feeling of guilt, because I understand where it comes from. But I'm just saying that it might not be rational guilt if we're saying that our belief has changed based on our research.
Yeah. So can we still feel guilty though?
Well, you can. I mean, but is it? I mean, what is it doing for you? Is it
Yeah.
is it really helping you? It's like I said, like feeling sad at someone's funeral. Well, that's normal. It'd be kind of abnormal not to feel sad. But it's part of the healing process. It's part of the mourning process. You eventually get over it. Depending upon how close you were to the person. I'm not saying it's possible. It's not easy to just completely get over losing them, but that sadness kind of ameliorates itself after a while. And same with anger, and same with jealousy, and just all emotions that we consider negative that really aren't. They have their place. So maybe the guilt was part of the process of how can I not, wait a minute, how can I not believe in God all of a sudden? Wait a minute, I've always believed in God. What's the matter with me? All right, but then the more you studied in the anthropology and all these other ologies you mentioned, the more you convince yourself. So that in itself should kind of get rid of the guilt, because you're proving it to yourself.
Yeah. What happens if we decide, and our family hears we decide, that we're starting to celebrate maybe this weekend, the Easter celebration, Christmas, birthdays? Is it the same principle when it comes to feeling guilty?
I think it is. Now, this is coming from someone that doesn't really, for the most part, holidays don't really mean anything to me. I think the first time I've done anything with Easter since I was a kid, because I grew up Lutheran, so we did Easter egg hunts and dyed Easter eggs every year. But that ended when I was like 10 or something. And this past couple of weeks ago was the first time I did anything with it, and it was only because my girlfriend has a family, including a 3-year-old granddaughter who lives about 1,000 miles away, and happened to be up 2 weeks ago. So we did an early Easter. So for me, it's I don't know. I'm just looking at the joy that the kids are getting from finding these Easter eggs and popping them in the basket and then eating chocolate and all those things that we do. And I mean, I guess where the guilt might come in is because we were always taught that God is offended. Because if there's anything not true about it, like we all know that Jesus was not born on December 25th. and the Magi really didn't show up when they said they did, and all these things that are false, and the Christmas tree has this meaning and this and that. And okay, so that's knowledge, but the idea that God hates it so much that we are deeply offending and hurting him by having anything to do with those celebrations. Well, if you want to go on thinking that way, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But if you don't think that way anymore, and you want to have some kind of participation in those celebrations, what is the logical reason for feeling guilty about doing something that you think is going to bring some joy to the kids, let's say, or to yourself, to your family? I mean, that's the way I look at it anyway. Is why feel guilty about something that we all know that, like I said, Jesus was not born on December 25th. That's, I don't know if you can say it's 100% proven, but we know that. But does it really matter? This whole idea of punctiliously, what they used to say is, it's in the Bible, but what does it say? He that is faithful in little is faithful in much. And what they would, okay, that's a nice principle. So it's not just that you're faithful in the big things, but even in small things, that's a great thing. But they would tend to go down these dead ends, these
Yep.
blind alleyways, and apply that to the limit. Where, my goodness, everything you do shows, the way you brush your teeth. I don't know, the way the way you comb your hair, everything is we're showing God how much we love him by every little thing that we do. And it's just ridiculous to imagine that God is that concerned with all these silly little things that enter into people's lives,
Yeah.
I mean, if you learned one thing of it, and again, I don't know how many of the listeners still have a belief in God, but it doesn't really matter. But if you do believe that God is forgiving and loving and understanding and not judgmental, you can't really square that with the Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs that, just by saying, like if somebody says Merry Christmas and we say, oh, same to you. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. I mean to say, have a nice day. Oh my God, I have to pray to Jehovah about it. Yeah. I mean, do you really think he cares? Really, really, the God of the universe really cares about this punctilious bunch of nonsense? So, there's, again, I'm not trying to invalidate anybody's feelings if you're struggling with guilt, but there are times when it's good to really think it out, maybe write it down, talk to somebody about it.
Right. Rocky came back and she said, I don't feel guilty about stopping believing in God. A lot try to make me feel guilty, but I don't care. So the thinking that's coming back to her, is there a way that we can handle that?
Let's see. Let me read that again. I don't feel guilty about it, but a lot try to make me feel guilty. So you're, I guess, in other words, kind of struggling with people trying to make you feel guilty, even though you don't feel guilty. I guess, I don't know if I interpreted that right, but because that could be a struggle in itself when people you do care about. I mean, I always say, if somebody cuts me off on the road and gives me the finger or something like that, I don't care. I'm not going to get excited and mad. It's just an idiot that I'll never see again anyway. But when it's somebody you really care about, your mother or your brother or your best friend or whatever, I guess what happens is you want to please them. And if they're trying to make you feel guilty, it seems like there's only two things we can do is like continue to make them feel guilty because we refuse to bend, or bend. Again, the thing is, if we're true to our own principles and our own self and our own knowledge, then we, I mean, that's going to incur other emotions. Like we're going to go to bed guilty about how we betrayed ourselves. You can't, so you can't win. You can't win when you're dealing with people that are so black and white and so one-sided. We have the truth. You don't believe one tiny aspect of it, you're an apostate, you're wrong, you're bad, you left Jehovah. You can't compete with that. There's no way you're ever going to be able to. And you're never going to make them happy until you do exactly everything the way they want you to do it and believe everything, or at least say that you believe everything the way they do. And then you won't be true to yourself. You're going to be miserable. It's going to do much more harm to you than a little bit of a guilt feeling, Yep. But getting rid of the guilt, I realize, is a little harder. But I think if you realize that you cannot make them happy and be true to yourself at the same time, that I think should really help, kind of at least assuage the guilt feelings.
Yeah, true. Okay, so we've looked at quite in depth in some, well, not in depth, but a number of subjects with regards to the J-dubs and what we formerly once believed. So we obviously don't want to stay there because we know it's not very healthy for us. We want to be able to start moving forward, going on to something much better. Now, if we've got this guilt, what would you say some of the steps could be that could help us to start refocusing to get the guilt that we have going on up here all the time, putting it out so that we can focus?
Well, again, I think it's a matter of taking each instance of it by itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it we feel? I mean, you can't, because just to say I feel guilt all the time, you have to feel guilty about something. I mean, anger, you just don't walk around angry unless there's something to be angry about, or sad, or happy. So what is it that I feel guilty about? And I mean, you can categorize it as, is it a big or a small thing? So if it's like, I just let the door to that retail store slam in that old elderly person's face because I wasn't paying attention. Well, that's not a big thing. But you're probably going to say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, sir. I wasn't paying attention." And he'll probably say, "Oh, don't worry about it." So that was a small thing. You got over it. Now there are bigger things, but the bigger it gets, the more it should be definable and categorizable. Like, did you really do something wrong? Did I really do something wrong with this big, I celebrated Christmas or whatever it is? Was there really something wrong with that? And then there's the question of, was it deliberate or accidental? And again, that doesn't really make a big difference unless it was something really awful that we did. But because like letting the door slam in the older person's face was probably an accident, and we felt bad and we apologized and we're done. Okay, fine. But if it was deliberate, well, then it's like, oh, how could I have done that? That would probably apply to something much bigger. Like I deliberately set fire to the Kingdom Hall or something like that. So was it big or small? Was it deliberate or accidental? And so what degree of guilt are we feeling? Is it really consuming us? And then I think if you kind of like sort it out and take them one at a time like that and deal with it directly, like, is it really rational that I feel guilty about celebrating Easter tomorrow or today, wherever you are in the world? And if the answer is no, then we should be able to get rid of that guilt feeling, because it doesn't make sense, right?
No, it doesn't.
It's almost like because we're talking about sadness and anger. So let's say we're sad because we just heard that a very dear person, somebody who was very dear to us just died, and we're just distraught. We're crying our eyes out. We're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then we somehow hear that it was a false report. They didn't die after all. It was like they were in the hospital, but they came out okay. I'm sorry about the misinformation, but are we going to continue to be sad? Because it's not true anymore. Right? So why are you sad? Because you're not. Automatically you feel bad. You may be angry that the story was told the way it was or whatever, but you're eventually going to return to a more normal state because the information was not correct. So it's kind of the same with any information that makes us feel guilty about celebrating a holiday or not participating in the worship that Jehovah's Witnesses think is the only truth. Once we have the information that is just irrational to think that way, then it should help us to kind of get over the guilt at some point. Maybe not today, but soon.
So if we're going to start getting over the guilt, getting away from the J-dub thinking, where could we start?
Yeah, well, that's I guess it gets into the unconscious mind versus the conscious mind, and cognitive dissonance and all that stuff, because the more we educate ourselves, the farther away we get from that thinking. And thoughts lead to emotions. There's no emotion we ever feel that is not preceded by a thought. And just to further define that, and this is based on David, what's his name? David Burns. David Burns, who's a renowned psychiatrist, that a thought has to be in our head for it to affect us, but that's not enough, because I can say, Shayne, you know what? Tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, Martians are going to land and set fire to your neighborhood. Are you going to?
Yay!
Are you going to be? Yeah, you're probably not going to be up all night worrying about it because you know it's a bunch of crap. But it's going to be in your head because this is what Gary said. And you're going to probably walk around saying, "Can you believe this nonsensical story?" But I put it in your head, so it's in your head. If you believe it, that's when it's going to affect you negatively or positively.
Yeah.
So it has to be in your head, and you have to believe it. So if you don't believe, and let me go back to your original question. Could you just restate it, if you don't mind?
Restart it. The Martians have taken it from me. With regard, taking the steps to be able to work
right. Yeah. So what I was getting at is realize. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I get a little carried away sometimes. So realizing that there is no such thing as any kind of an emotion unless a thought precedes it, whether it's happiness, joy, sadness, whatever. So the more we replace old information with new, the closer we come to getting away from the painful thoughts that are associated with the old information. Assuming that so anyway, what happens with the cognitive dissonance? What happens with our unconscious mind versus our conscious mind? Conscious mind is where all these new thoughts come in. We just read a book; it's in our conscious mind, but our unconscious mind goes to battle with it. It's every thought that comes into our head has to pass the test that the unconscious mind says, does this agree with what I already know? And all of those thoughts that we've ever learned are still in our head. We don't necessarily believe them anymore, but the fact that we once did is in our head. And the fact that that thought exists in somebody's mind somewhere is in our head. You can't just delete it like a computer file. You don't just delete it. It's still there. So what really happens is the more we get away from what that old abusive or incorrect thinking did to our emotions, and the more we fill our minds with correct thoughts or healthful thoughts, whatever you want to call them, the more we're going to allow our conscious mind to win and replace and really start getting rid of those unconscious mind thoughts, even though they're still going to be there. But we're basically de-emphasizing their importance, and we can laugh at them.
Okay.
I think when you get to the point where you can actually laugh at some of this garbage, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, because I know some people have a really big struggle with all that it's done. I could have had a much better life if I had gone to college, all kinds of things, or they were abused as children. So, some horrible things, So I'm not saying it's easy or that it's funny. If you've been abused, let's say, it's nothing funny about that. But when you think back on some of the logic that the elders would use or that the friends in the field service group would use, it's hysterically funny. It's just so stupid that it's beyond belief. Like, how any human could believe this, So I think if you get to that point where you can laugh at something, it's great medicine. It really is. It's just, because then it's when it comes into your mind, are you going to feel bad that you feel guilty? No, you're not even going to feel guilty. You're going to be laughing about it. I'm not trying to say everybody's go spend the night laughing about these things, but it's something that I've experienced anyway. When my girlfriend and I are both ex-JWs, and we'll sometimes talk about the way things were handled in her congregation and the way they were handled in my universe, and we're just like, can you believe how dumb this stuff is? I mean, why? And we believe this at one point. It's funny. I mean, it really is.
It is. You mentioned before about the elders' logic. Are you saying they're logical? Because like one of these comments here, you can't use logic with the normal J-dubs because you use logic and it just like goes over their head. It's like non-existent.
Right. But I mean, they think that they're logical, and like when they go down these dead ends, with using something like, he that is faithful in least is faithful in much. All right, that's a fine principle, but my goodness, when you take anything and try to match it up to that standard, you're never going to be finished trying to be perfect in every little detail. So they are trying to be logical, and with many things, like logically, if Jesus was not born on December 25th, that therefore Christmas is a lie. How does God feel about lying? that's logical according to a certain form of logic. But there's also the logic that says that if there is a God who they say who it is, that God is also forgiving, understanding, not judgmental. So do you really think he cares that much about whether we got the day wrong or something? So, it's just what path you want your logic to go down. And when they are very, very black and white and very one-sided, and they're absolutely convinced that they have the truth, which basically means not that just everything that they have learned is the truth, but that everything that they are going to learn from this organization is and will be truth. Well,
Yep.
the logic is never going to make sense in any context when you think that way, because it's such black and white thinking. It doesn't. There's no allowance for other thoughts that might make something logical.
Yeah.
So it's limited. It's limited logic.
Yeah, definitely. And even if we've been out for a while and we're going along nice and smoothly, every now and again something will come up, like Ruth mentions here, with regards to J-Dubs feeling guilty because they're not entirely sure that J-Dubs are wrong. Like when the pandemic happened last year, a lot went back to the J-Dubs because they thought, oh no, maybe they're right.
Right.
How can we look at that as we're going along nicely, doing all the steps, doing our thinking, making the list to help us think correctly and get away from the guilt? How can we cope with what Ruth has actually highlighted?
Yeah, and it's a very good point, because that is a feeling that a lot of people have. I think that we to be sure, maybe we didn't prove it to ourselves. Maybe we didn't do the research that we might have done. Well, first of all, I want to say that if you want to go back to the Jehovah's Witnesses, you have my permission. I'm not going to, because to me, personal beliefs are personal beliefs. I don't care what they are, unless your belief is that you should fly a jet plane into an office building in New York City. That wouldn't be good. But pretty much, personal beliefs are personal beliefs. So if somebody wants to be a Jehovah's Witness, become one, go back to them. I hope you don't, because I think it's a mistake personally. But it's up to you. But I guess I'd have to say what. Is it guilt that's making you go back? Again, is that rational?
Yeah.
And how did one day being convinced that they're wrong all of a sudden be convinced that they're right? I think part of one of the things that we all go through, and you mentioned the doubt thing, and it's a tremendously good point. One of the things we all go through is, and I don't know if this is what you have gone through, but it's typical to go through a period of mourning almost, where I believed for 30 years or whatever that I was going to live through Armageddon and become perfect in a perfect world, everlasting life in a paradise earth. Now I don't know what to believe. I don't even know if I believe in God anymore. Do I go to hell when I die? So some of us struggle with not just knowing that the old thoughts are wrong, but now what do we replace that with? If it's really, really important to us to believe in God, is it just because it's important and it gives us comfort, or is it because we logically have proven that to ourselves? And you can't really prove it, but if we've proven it to ourselves. So I guess I would just say, like, why is somebody that was so positive that they are wrong now be going back? Well, like you said, maybe because of COVID or something like that. But recognize those as fear tactics. That's what they are. Like when Stephen Lett gets up there and he says, in context of talking about COVID-19, that we're living in the last days of the last days, and soon is going to be the last day of the last days of the last days. I mean, that is a complete fear tactic that's not even rational. Like the sign that Jesus gave had so many aspects to it, not just disease. And we've seen diseases come and go. We've seen the Spanish influenza come and go. We've seen AIDS. It's still around, but it's treatable now. And in the beginning, it was an absolute death sentence. We've seen tuberculosis pretty much almost get wiped out. So COVID-19, I had my shot. I'm not worried about it. It's the virus might not die. It probably won't, but once we're all immune to it, what's the difference? It doesn't mean the system is ending, because what about everything else? What about the earthquakes? What is so remarkable at the rate of earthquakes compared to any other time in history? Tell me about it. Or world wars. First of all, the World War I did not actually happen on time in 1914, because the calendar is basically that Jesus took his throne in October, and World War I started in June. So how is that? And then the world is relatively peaceful in many parts of the world, not 100%, but so how do you square all this stuff and really look at the world as the scary place that they want us to see it as? It's just a fear tactic, and the design of any fear tactic by anything that's, let's say, cultic, any organization, is to keep you in. The fear is designed to keep you in.
Yeah.
So if you want to restudy the Watchtower and come to the conclusion that maybe they were right on going back, well, that's your prerogative. But if it's based on fear or guilt, that's not going to. I'll tell you another thing about guilt. I think Shayne and I talked about this earlier before the broadcast. And I'm going to relate it to the question. Is that guilt is a really bad motivator. And I've seen that many times, even with connection with the old field service arrangements, where people would just not be regular in field service, and the groups would be really paltry, and so they put guilt trips on people about how, you really got to get out in service this weekend if you love Jehovah and you care about people dying in Armageddon. So all of a sudden, 20, 30, 40, 50 people flock to the field service group that Saturday. What happens the next Saturday? They're not there because they were motivated by guilt, and guilt is not a lasting thing. Guilt can solve a problem. Can get us to not touch the stove. Like pain gets us to not touch the stove, but then we don't feel that pain all day long, every day, every week, like to tell us to not touch the stove. So guilt is a really bad motivator. So if someone goes back to the organization because of guilt or because of fear, they're just going to be enslaved to guilt and fear, because it doesn't motivate people in a positive way. It never does. It just keeps you stuck. And so that's, and again, I'm not trying to give a speech to say do this or don't do that, but I'm just saying that if that's the motivation, guilt and or fear because of COVID or because of maybe we're in the last days after all, just be prepared to be very stuck.
Yeah, definitely. Milan has just made a comment with regard to what you've just said, and we'd have to agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking back over nearly the last hour, which has gone very fast, let's just summarize some of the things that can help us to get that guilt that can surround us to move away so that we can think clearly. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that it would be good, one of the things you said to do was research. Mm-hmm. What sort of things to research?
Well, I mean, first of all, research your own mind. Like, what is it that I'm feeling guilty about? Specifically, what is it that I'm feeling guilty about?
Yep.
And is that rational or irrational? If it's irrational, throw it away. I'm not saying it's easy, but throw it away. If it's rational, well, why is it rational? Am I really wrong, or did I really not do something I'm not supposed to, or did I not do something I am supposed to do? What can I actually do about it? That's the other thing, is if we feel guilty because we forgot to pick somebody up or something like that, and there's nothing you can do. It's a done thing, So why go on feeling guilty about it? So analyze what it is. Is it rational to be guilty about it? And if it's not, forget it. If it is, okay, what can I do about it? What should I do about it? Did I do something wrong, or did I not do something right? And again, if it is rational, well, then do something about it. Maybe it means an apology, or it just means not doing something again. Like the guy that we let the door slam on the way into the store. Maybe it's too late, but we just say, you know what? I got to stop being in such a rush all the time. I got to think more about other people. So do it, and feel good about it. If guilt is going to actually affect us in a positive way, and it can, if it's rational, to allow it to affect us in a positive way is to not repeat behavior that was wrong or destructive. And we all do it. We all do things every once in a while that were just wrong. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. And by the way, there's a big difference between guilt and shame. Like shame is thinking, I'm a bad person. This is who I am. Guilt is saying, this is what I did. I want to make sure I don't do it again. Then it's healthy,
Yep.
because we're making ourselves a better person and we're affecting the people around us in a positive way.
Right. So the things we've just heard you say, you're basically saying when we do our research, let's critically think. Let's ask ourselves the questions so we can get our mind to tick over and go, right, what is it? How can I improve? And go down a series of questions that we can ask ourselves.
Right.
Cool. Okay, you also mentioned with regards to being guilty, maybe leaving and still getting the J-dub into our head, we can have a list of things that we could ask ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Like ask yourselves, all right, so these people are disappointed with me. They're upset with me that I've hurt them because I'm not there anymore. I've hurt them. What can I do to ameliorate that hurt? And I think it's going to be a very short list. It's going to be, I have to go back to the meetings. I have to get baptized. I have to get reinstated. I have to go out and serve it. That's going to, because nothing short of that is going to make them happy ever. So does it really make sense to try to make these people happy? Even if it's your parents. I'm not trying to insult anybody by saying it should be easy, because I know it's not. I know it. But the fact is that pleasing them is not going to be easy because you got to do everything they want you to do and you don't believe in it anymore. So, just do that little exercise of writing down, what can I do to make them happy?
Because would you agree what Karen says here in her comment?
It really will get better. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, it really will, because again, as new thoughts fill your mind and the others recede into the past, they're always going to be there, but they're not going to hurt you anymore, because again, emotions are preceded by thoughts. And if we're not thinking about the guilt that we were subjected to and the fear, if we're just not thinking that way anymore, I'm not saying you're never going to have a hurtful emotion about something, but those specific emotions, the guilt and the fear, they're going to have a hard time coming up in your heart if they're not in your head.
All right. How much time is it going to take then?
Can't say. I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that as a life coach, I typically work with people like maybe 1 or 4 sessions or something like that. Whereas a therapist is typically they're ongoing. It could be a month, could be 6 months. I went to a therapist for years and years, on and off, not all the time, but because it was always something that needed a solution. And I still didn't have the real solution to these things because I was still a JW. So I was just treating the symptoms and not really getting to the root of it. So if that's what a person's doing, it might take a long time. But if you're really putting those new thoughts in your head and suppressing and beating those old thoughts up, like I said, with my life coaching thing, I don't usually see people more than like 3 or 4 times. And the next time they see me, it's because of something else. It's because they want to start a new business and they just want to, it has nothing to do with, getting old doctrines out of their head. It's because they want to do something positive. They want to, one person I coached wanted to start a not-for-profit business to help young people who were at risk of suicide as young as 8 years old because of bullying. Trying to hire a board of directors, get a website going, a whole bunch of different things. Had nothing to do with whatever her past was. It just had to do with what I want to start this business. I thought, wow, this is like the most fantastic project they've ever heard of, So, the next time somebody sees me, they might never see me again, or they might come to me with something like that, which is like, oh my God, like I want to help you, So anyway, the point is that I don't know. I can't say, it's going to take X days, X weeks, X months or something like that. But I think you have to be convinced in your mind that you will get better, and you will. Yep. That's anybody that's got depression or just the guilt feelings or whatever it is. If you believe that you're going to get better, you're not feeling well today, but you really believe in your heart and your mind that you're going to get better, you will.
Well, there's one thing for sure. If we never start, if we never continue, we will never get there.
Right. Yep.
So if somebody has enjoyed listening to what you've said today, Gary, and would like to reach out to you, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Well, I have a website. I mean, you can reach me on Facebook or whatever, but I have a website called Open Path Life Coach. So it's just 4 words, openpathlifecoach.com. And that's got contact information, my phone number, my email address, and everything. There's also a page on my fee structure, which is because I don't just coach people from high control groups. I do career coaching, life coaching, life transition coaching. I don't actually charge people that come to me because I kind of look at everybody as brothers, believe it or not, even though I hate that expression because it reminds me of the JWs or friends. And it's like, if somebody needs my help, I want to help, I mean, if somebody wants to continue with a career plan or something like that, well, then I'm going to have to talk about whatever that might cost. But no, if somebody's coming to me because they have guilt feelings or whatever, fear is just contact me.
Okay,
There's no charge for it.
Yep. Okay. Well, we really want to say thank you for being part of our live stream today, Gary. It's good to get different views on different things that we can start doing, get over some of the things that we really are struggling with. We want to say thank you for helping us to do that. And for those ones who have been on our live stream, thank you very much for all the comments. It's been so nice to see how many have been commenting. It's great to be able to see your interest in wanting to look at things from a different avenue, a different angle, a different way of being able to do that. And that's what all these live streams are all about. We need to move on. We don't want to be stuck in that place where we've come from. We want to be out of there. We don't, like some people have struggled for decades because they did not know they could heal. That's so sad. We want to be able to help. We want to be able to support. And we look forward to seeing you again. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
Do appreciate you being here, Gary. Just to give you a bit of a heads up for next week, the subject that seems to be of interest on most people on YouTube, where our live streams go to now, is the subject of sex. Well, next week, it's not Serena, it's Michelle. Michelle's going to help us look at whether we need to be shameful of it. And if we are shameful of it, or if we have that feeling, how can we control that feeling? Once again, the high control group has had a large part to play in our life, and we want to be able to put that aside so that we can enjoy our lives and live them to the full. So once again, thank you for everybody for being here. We certainly have appreciated. We look forward to seeing you again. Stay safe, and until next time, thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Bye.
Life after Jehovah's Witnesses. What are we going to do? What can you do? Is it really possible that you can dare to dream? How can we do that? Regardless of who you are, each one of us who has left a high control group will go through the stages that all survivors go through. Some move through a little faster than others. You see, when we lose something, we can get hurt, whether from family or our thinking. We may be in denial or speechless at the shock of it all. What is it all about when we get numb? It may be a roller coaster of emotion when you least expect it. We might search through our life and get angry at what's happened, or feel afraid when things happen in the world because we were taught to think that way. And as we go down this journey, we may get lonely. We might panic about things that they've taught us for so many years, and then when we finally do something for ourselves, we feel guilty. Through this journey of highs and lows, we need to make some adjustments. Yes, we might get depressed, we might get upset, we might feel that we don't fit in anywhere. The new relationships that we have, whether romantic or in everyday life, shows us the strength that was there all along. The patterns that we formed in our lives are now gone. We have the power within. We are free to create new patterns that give us hope, gives us a chance to finally help ourselves, to move on, to enjoy the freedom we now have and live the life we deserve. Will you dare to dream? But the question remains, how? You have the freedom. You can have a guilt-free life. It's all there for you to have. So you can dare to dream. Life holds special magic for those who dare to dream.